It's Firearms Friday at the Wyoming State Museum here in Cheyenne. I'm Evan Green. I'm the firearms historian for the museum, and I've been working in the firearms collection for about 5 years. I have the luxury of spending as much time as I want doing research, going down rabbit holes, and evaluating and identifying and documenting these interesting guns. So I've talked about these two revolvers at the past, but when I didn't have an original 1861 Remington revolver. This is a Colt 1860 Army. This one is sometimes called an 1858. I think collectors really prefer the 1861 date. But these were the two most popular revolvers purchased by the Union during the Civil War. The Confederacy, if they were able to get them, were also very impressed and interested, liking these two revolvers. And there was two schools of thought as to which was the best gun. There were obviously more of the Colts in circulation, and a lot of these, both of these, found their way onto the American frontier. We have one of these that's all rusty that was picked up at the Bates battlefield near Thermopolis in the Owl Mountains of Wyoming. But this is a really nice one. This one was on loan to another state museum and just recently returned. And it's in really good condition. No finish left, but no pitting or rust either. So really nice old Remington revolver. So some of the issues with these guns. In order to disassemble this Colt revolver, you had to remove this barrel wedge. And when you did that, you had the barrel wedge, the barrel assembly, and the cylinder, all separate parts. So if you lost this little barrel wedge and didn't have any way to replace it or anything to hold the barrel to the frame, you were out of the fight. I like the aesthetics of this. I think it's a really handsome gun. One of the drawbacks that was resolved or addressed with the Remington is this is an open top. And the only thing that's holding all this together is this connection here with that barrel wedge. So it was probably not as strong a gun as the Remington, but again, 44 caliber, actually 454, but it was called a 44 caliber, 44 Army caliber. And again, a very reliable, and this is a very nice example. When we acquired it, it didn't have this loading lever here, was missing, so we were able to find an actual loading lever from the correct period. It's not a reproduction, it's an actual Colt 1860 Army loading lever. So anyway, nice old gun, and you understand, all of you, probably most of you, that to load one of these, what you did was put a powder charge in each of the charge holes and then put a ball or a conical bullet on top of the powder and use this loading lever to ram that ball back against the powder charge. And it had to be tight against the powder charge because if there was an air space in between the ball and the powder charge, you risk a detonation which could damage the gun. Still true today. But anyway, this is a nice old Colt revolver. Doesn't have the U.S. stamp on it, and it has the brass trigger guard. So I suspect this may not have been a Civil War era gun and was not issued by the military, lest it would have that U.S. stamp on the frame. So probably a civilian model. Some of the civilian models, the back strap and trigger guard were plated, nickel plated or silver plated. Okay, here's the Remington. And again, this has the advantage of being a very solid revolver because it has this top strap over the top of the cylinder. To me, it's not as ergonomic as the Colt, but I've shot a lot of different Colt revolvers and not many Remingtons. But this one, you can, it loads the same way as the Colt. You got to put powder and ball and then put percussion caps on the nipples for each cylinder. But this one, you can drop the loading lever, you can pull out that center pivot pin for the cylinder, and the cylinder will come out for cleaning or maintenance or replacement. If you watch some of the Clint Eastwood movies, there's a thing about they carried extra loaded cylinders so they could swap them out. And that story is debated. More likely that if it was available, they would carry a second handgun. But again, nothing falls out. You don't have 3 or 4 parts in your hand when you take the cylinder out, because this is a captured pin and the loading lever is captured, and obviously the barrel is solidly affixed to the frame. So it had some advantages. But again, both of these go all the way in there. There we go. So they had advantages and disadvantages to both of them, although I'm not clear on the disadvantages of this one. It's a popular gun and a really nice example here. Again, just recently returned to the museum after having been out on loan. So that's it for this episode. Colt 1860 Army, Remington 1861 new model Army. So that's it for today, for today's episode. If you have comments or questions, or want to just talk guns or Wyoming history or anything else, you can call the museum at their main number. You can find that on the museum's homepage. They'll take a message, and I promise I will get back to you. We're thinking about, at some point, I've done this kind of informally, but we occasionally have requests from citizens to evaluate their firearms. And I recently did one that ended up being somewhat disappointing for the person who brought it in. I actually went to him to look at it. We can't allow people to bring firearms onto state property. But he had a family story that, when we looked at the gun, didn't really match up. So anyway, we're thinking about doing that kind of an outreach thing. We have a new director for state parks and cultural resources, under which the museum functions. He's a gun guy, and he likes to come down if I've got something interesting going on with the firearms in the museum's collection. So anyway, that's kind of out there as a possibility. We're also thinking about maybe a book about the firearms in the museum's collection. We're thinking about that as a project at some point. So if I live long enough, maybe we'll get all of that done. So anyway, thanks for watching.